I stared at the number on the monitor as it flickered from green to red, my performance score, a 43 out of 100. This can't be real, I whispered, feeling the air leave my lungs. Across the table, my boss Lane wouldn't meet my gaze. Her fingers drummed nervously against her tablet as the projector displayed my dismal results to the empty conference room. Productivity below expectations, communication lacking, team integration weak. The words blurred together as I struggled to comprehend what I was seeing. I don't understand, I said. Last quarter, I scored an 87. I've led 2 major projects since then, both delivered ahead of schedule. Lane cleared her throat. The metrics don't lie, Penny. The metrics don't lie. But someone clearly had. I leaned forward, scrolling through the detailed breakdown, numbers and evaluations that contradicted everything I'd achieved over the past year. Projects I'd salvaged, ideas that had saved the company thousands, all erased and replaced with falsified failures. This is someone else's review, I insisted. It has to be. Lane finally looked at me, her face pale. She glanced at the door, then back at her tablet. Something flickered across her screen that wasn't on the projector. Her eyes widened. I need to... She rose abruptly, knocking over her water glass, not bothering to write it. I need to check something. Wait here. Water streamed across the table, dripping onto my portfolio. I didn't move to stop it. My mind raced through possible explanations. A system error, a mix-up with another employee, some cruel prank. When Lane returned 7 minutes later, she was visibly trembling. Penny, she whispered, you need to leave the building immediately. She slid a printed document across the table, careful to avoid the puddle. Submit your resignation today. Don't hesitate. What are you talking about? My voice rose. I'm not resigning because of some obvious mistake. I'm not resigning because of some obvious mistake. It's not a mistake. She pushed the paper closer. Read this, but not here. Go home. You'll understand. I looked down at the paper. The header read, Strategic Talent Reduction Implementation Plan. Penny Wesley. Lane gripped my arm, her nails biting in. They're watching. Go now. I never showed you this. The paper burned in my hand as I walked to my desk, grabbed my purse, and headed for the elevator. In the reflection of the metal doors, I caught a glimpse of the head of Human Resources watching me from the far end of the hallway, speaking softly into her phone. Hello to all my amazing listeners out there. If you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, wondering what happens next, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, this story only escalates from here, and you won't want to miss a single moment of what happens when someone who thinks they control everything suddenly realizes they've made a grave mistake. Drop a comment if you've ever had that gut-wrenching moment when you realize someone was working against you. Now let's get back to what happened after I left that building. My name is Penny Wesley. Until 3 weeks ago, I was the process improvement specialist at a manufacturing company producing medical equipment. I'm 32, single, with a degree in industrial engineering and a reputation for being thorough to the point of exasperation. My grandmother called it being particular, which sounds nicer than obsessive, but both fit. I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment with more plants than furniture and a habit of working late into the night. My coworkers used to joke that I was married to my job. I suppose that makes what happened a particularly brutal divorce. The drive home from the office that day exists in my memory as a series of fractured images, red traffic lights blurring through tears, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, the rumble of my tires on the shoulder when I had to pull over because I couldn't breathe. It wasn't until I was sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea growing cold beside me, that I finally unfolded the document Lane had risked her career to give me. The Strategic Talent Reduction Implementation Plan was corporate euphemism for something far more sinister. As I read through the 5 pages, my hands shook so violently I had to press them flat against the table. The document outlined a 6-month strategy to systematically dismantle my confidence, reputation, and career. It detailed exact tactics, reassigning my successful projects to others, imposing impossible deadlines, excluding me from meetings, then punishing me for being uninformed, and recording fabricated performance issues. The final page included a timeline for my anticipated voluntary departure and even a script for my exit. Interview. My supposed crime? Raising concerns about a new production process that prioritized speed over safety. I had data highlighting potential risks to both employees and patients. I had suggested alternatives that would cost more upfront but prevent long-term issues. The signature at the bottom belonged to Weston, the chief operations officer, who had personally praised my work just 2 months prior. I read it 3 times, searching for any sign it wasn't real. Then I went to the bathroom and vomited. That night, sleep eluded me. I sat on my balcony staring at the city lights, trying to reconcile the company I thought I knew with the one plotting my undoing. Dawn found me still there, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, my mind spinning between disbelief, rage, and a deep, cutting hurt. By morning, I convinced myself there had to be an explanation. Perhaps this was a draft never meant to be implemented, maybe intended for someone else. I would return, demand answers, fight this. Then my phone chimed with an email. Acceptance of resignation from Human Resources, thanking me for the verbal resignation I supposedly gave Lane yesterday, confirming my employment was terminated effective immediately. I never resigned. Another email arrived minutes later, this one from Weston himself, expressing regret at my decision to leave, but respecting my choice to pursue other opportunities, hoping I would speak positively of my time at the company, and reminding me of the confidentiality agreement I had signed. They were shaping the narrative, building a paper trail, erasing the truth before I could tell it. I tried calling Lane, no answer. I texted her, "What's happening?" Hours later, her reply, "I'm sorry, I can't talk. They're saying you resigned. Did you?" "No," I typed back. "They're lying." No response came. That afternoon, a courier delivered a box containing my personal items from my desk, along with a severance agreement offering 2 weeks' pay in exchange for waiving any claims against the company. I left it unopened on the floor of my closet. For 3 days, I barely moved from my couch, replaying every interaction, every meeting, searching for missed signs. Had Weston's smile been too tight when he complimented my presentation? Had my team been avoiding me? When did I become a target instead of an asset? On the 4th day, my neighbor Terry knocked. She worked in accounting at the same company but a different building. She'd heard I'd quit. "Everyone's talking about it," she said, sitting awkwardly on my unmade couch. "They're saying you had some kind of breakdown during your review." I showed her the document. Her face went pale. "Penny," she whispered, "this isn't the first one I've seen." Terry sank deeper into the couch. About 8 months ago, she had noticed unusual expense reports, training seminars that didn't exist, consultants with vague descriptions, special projects with no deliverables. She lowered her voice as if someone might overhear. She traced the approvals back to the executive team, authorized through a cost center called Talent Management Initiatives. I pulled my knees to my chest. How does this connect to me? "The timing," Terry said. "Every odd expense was followed within days by a resignation. 23 in the past year." She paused. All high performers who had recently raised concerns about something. My mouth went dry. 23 people I could track. There might be more. Terry hesitated. One was my friend Alec from Product Safety, who had questioned the testing protocols on the new ventilator line. Suddenly, he was being written up for being late, missing deadlines he didn't even know existed. The room tilted. What happened to him? He quit after his performance review, saying he couldn't handle the stress. 2 weeks later, he was in therapy for anxiety attacks. My tea had gone cold, forgotten on the coffee table. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, echoing the chills spreading through me. Why would they go to all this trouble? I asked. Why not just fire people? Wrongful termination lawsuits, bad press. This way, on paper, troubled employees resigned voluntarily. Terry reached for her bag. I shouldn't stay long. I'm probably next on their list for asking questions about the accounting. After she left, I sat in the deepening darkness, letting the implications settle over me. Not an isolated incident, not an error, a system, a strategy. 23 people before me. I opened my laptop and started searching social media for former employees. One by one, I sent messages. I recently left the company too. Would you be willing to talk about your experience? Most never replied. Some answered with variations of I signed an agreement or I've moved on, but 7 people agreed to meet. We gathered at a small cafe 10 minutes from the office. I recognized a few faces. Others were strangers. Different departments, different roles, but the same pattern. They spoke up about something. Safety concerns, ethical violations, financial irregularities, and suddenly became targets. Blake, a former quality inspector, showed us his performance reviews, outstanding for 4 years, then collapsing after he questioned a change in testing standards. They scheduled meetings during my daughter's recital, which they knew I couldn't miss, he said, then wrote me up for not being a team player. Mina, who worked in regulatory compliance, nodded. They moved my deadlines without telling me, then criticized me for missing them. Did anyone fight back? I asked. Silence settled over the table. I tried, said Damien, a former engineer. Filed a complaint with HR. 2 days later, my entire team got an email about my personal issues affecting my judgment. I threatened legal action, Rachel said quietly. The next day, my work computer was wiped clean. Every file, every email gone. They said it was a system error. Rain streaked down the cafe windows, blurring the world outside. Inside, the 7 of us leaned over cooling coffee, comparing wounds inflicted by the same invisible hand. We should go public, I finally said. Together, with all our evidence. What evidence? Blake cut in. My word against theirs. Performance reviews they can claim were accurate. I need this reference for my new job. I have kids, a mortgage, Mina added. One by one, they explained why they couldn't risk it, couldn't afford it, couldn't survive it. I walked home alone in the rain, understanding now why the system worked so perfectly. It didn't just remove people. It isolated them, broke them down, made them doubt themselves, and fear pushing back. That night, I dreamed I was back in the conference room, water spreading across the table, rising higher and higher until I was drowning, Weston watching impassively from the doorway. I woke gasping for air. The next morning, an email arrived from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, no greeting, just an attachment and the words, "You might find this useful." The attachment was a company organizational chart I'd never seen before. Unlike the public version, this one showed red lines connecting certain executives to a separate structure labeled Special Projects Division. Weston's name sat at the top. Another email arrived minutes later. Northeast Parking Garage, Level 3, 4 p.m., today. I debated whether to go. It could be a trap, a prank, or someone who genuinely wanted to help. After everything that had happened, trusting anyone felt reckless. At 3:55 p.m., I parked on Level 3, engine running. At 4:02, a car pulled in 2 spaces away. The driver's window lowered just enough for me to recognize Victor, the company's database administrator, a man I'd spoken to maybe twice in 3 years. "Get in your back seat and lie down," he said softly. "Make it look like you're grabbing something from the floor." I hesitated, then did as he asked. Through the gap between the front seats, I watched him approach, open my passenger door, and slide something under the seat before walking away without a word. When I was sure he was gone, I retrieved what he'd left, a thumb drive labeled insurance. At home, I plugged it into my laptop. It contained hundreds of files, emails, meeting minutes, HR documents, all tied to the Strategic Talent Reduction Program. There were assessment rubrics for identifying difficult employees, scripts for managers, templates for manufacturing performance issues, and a list of names. Employees already targeted, currently in process, and under evaluation. My name was there, along with everyone I'd met at the cafe. So was Victor's, marked monitoring phase. He was helping me at enormous risk to himself. I scrolled through file after file, rage building with every revelation. The program had been running for nearly 5 years. More than 60 employees had been quietly pushed out. The company had saved millions in severance. They would have paid for layoffs while avoiding any public scrutiny or legal consequences. It was elegant in its cruelty, effective in its simplicity, and completely, utterly illegal. I stayed up all night copying files, organizing evidence, making notes. By morning, I had a clear picture of what had happened, not just to me, but to dozens of others. What I didn't have was a plan. Going to the media seemed obvious, but the company's formidable legal resources would crush me before any story gained traction. Filing a lawsuit might work eventually, but could take years and drain the little savings I had. More importantly, neither option would fix what had been broken. Not just careers, but lives. People like Alec, still struggling with anxiety, like Rachel, who had lost her home when she couldn't find another job fast enough. I needed something more immediate, more impactful, something that would hit them where it truly hurt. For the next week, I barely slept. I reviewed every file, contacted more former employees, and built a comprehensive understanding of how the system worked and who orchestrated it. The picture that emerged was worse than I had imagined. The company had two faces, the public one that won awards for innovation and workplace excellence, and the hidden one that systematically destroyed anyone who threatened profit margins or exposed shortcuts. Then I discovered something that made me pause. In 3 weeks, the company would host the annual Industry Excellence Summit, a prestigious gathering of executives, investors, and media from across the medical manufacturing sector. Weston was scheduled to deliver the keynote on building a culture of innovation and integrity. The irony might have been amusing if it weren't so infuriating. As I stared at the summit agenda, something clicked into place. A dangerous idea, possibly career-ending for me, but potentially powerful enough to matter. I needed help. I called the group from the cafe, plus others I'd connected with since. 15 former employees agreed to meet at my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. Some brought partners for support. Others came alone, still carrying the weight of what had happened to them. "What I'm about to propose isn't without risk," I began, standing before them in my small living room. "If you want to walk away after hearing it, I understand completely." I laid out what I'd learned, what Victor had risked to share, and what I thought we could do. As I spoke, I watched their expressions shift from resignation to interest, to something I hadn't seen before: hope. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then Blake stood up. "I lost more than a job," he said. "I lost belief in myself." My daughter saw me cry for the first time. His voice cracked. "I'm in." One by one, others joined. Not everyone. Some had too much at stake, too much to lose. I respected their choice and promised to protect their identities regardless. But 11 people stayed, gathering around my kitchen table as we began to plan. We worked through the night, mapping every detail, anticipating obstacles, preparing contingencies. By sunrise, we had something that might actually work. Something that could expose the truth without risking legal retaliation. Something that might bring a measure of justice, not just for us, but for everyone who would come after if nothing changed. The plan hinged on the summit, the moment when the company would be most visible, most vulnerable. We had 17 days to prepare. On day 3, Victor messaged me. They're looking for the files. They know something's missing. On day 7, security protocols were changing, a new monitoring system being installed. On day 12, Weston was asking questions about former employees. Be careful. They sensed something coming but didn't know what or from whom. The uncertainty made them nervous. It also made them careless. As the summit approached, our group met daily, refining our approach, supporting each other through doubt and fear. Some had never stood up to authority before. Others had tried and been crushed. All carried scars from the company's actions. Working together began to heal something in each of us. Purpose replaced powerlessness. Solidarity overcame isolation. Even as anxiety about what we planned grew stronger, so did our resolve. The night before the summit, we gathered one last time to review everything. The room hummed with nervous energy. What if it doesn't work? Mina asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. What if we do all this and nothing changes? I looked around at these people who had become my allies, my friends, people who had every reason to stay hidden but chose to stand up. Then at least we tried, I said. At least we didn't let them win by staying silent. Rachel, who had barely spoken during our planning sessions, squared her shoulders. They took enough from me, she said. They don't get to take my voice too. We raised our glasses in silent agreement. As everyone prepared to leave, Blake pulled me aside. Are you sure about tomorrow? Once we start this, there's no going back. I thought about my sleepless nights, the panic attacks that now came without warning, the career I'd worked so hard to build, all destroyed by people who saw me as disposable. I'm sure, I said. See you tomorrow. After everyone left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the evidence we'd gathered, the plan we'd crafted. So many things could go wrong, so many ways we could fail. My phone chimed with a text from Victor. Security meeting just ended. They're adding guards for tomorrow's event. Someone's nervous. They should be, I thought. I packed my bag for the next day, my hands steady despite everything. The summit began at 9 a.m. By noon, the company would never be the same. I only hoped we'd all still be standing when it was over. The summit was held at the Grand Central Hotel, a gleaming glass structure downtown. I arrived 2 hours early, just as planned. The venue buzzed with staff arranging chairs, testing microphones, and hanging banners emblazoned with the company logo and the summit's theme, innovation with integrity. I nearly laughed at the irony. From my position near the registration table, I watched attendees filter in, executives in tailored suits, industry journalists flashing press badges, investors eager to hear about projected growth. None of them knew what was coming. Blake arrived at 8:15, nodding subtly as he collected his visitor badge. Mina and Rachel came together at 8:30, professional and unremarkable in their business attire. One by one, our group assembled, dispersing throughout the venue as we'd practiced, never acknowledging one another. At 8:45, my phone vibrated with a message from Victor. Weston just arrived. He's with the PR director and 2 security personnel. My heart rate spiked. Extra security hadn't been part of our calculations. I scanned the lobby and spotted 2 men with earpieces stationed near the main entrance. Would they recognize any of us from employee photos? Had security been briefed on specific threats? I texted the group. Security presence increased. Proceed with caution. By 9 a.m., the ballroom was nearly full. I took my seat near the back, close to an exit as planned. The program opened with the company's chief marketing officer welcoming the audience and outlining the day's agenda. My palms were slick. I wiped them on my skirt. At 9:30, the first speaker took the stage, a well-known industry analyst discussing market trends. I barely heard a word, too focused on scanning the room, tracking security, monitoring our team's positions. Rachel caught my eye from across the room, her face tight with anxiety. For a moment, I wondered if we should abort. The risks suddenly felt enormous, the consequences unbearable. Then I saw him. Weston, seated in the front row, scrolling through his phone, completely at ease. The man who had approved the destruction of careers, lives, mental health, all to protect profit margins and silence legitimate concerns. My resolve hardened. We would proceed. At 10:15, a scheduled networking break began. Attendees spilled into the foyer, balancing coffee cups and pastries, exchanging business cards. Our team moved into position for the next phase. I stationed myself near the ballroom entrance, watching the minutes tick by. At 10:29, disaster struck. Blake texted, "Security checking bags at bathroom exit. They saw the materials." My stomach dropped. Blake had been responsible for carrying part of our evidence, copies of the targeting documents meant for distribution at the critical moment. If security had confiscated them, I began calculating how much of our plan could survive without that piece. When Blake appeared beside me, his face ashen, my fears were confirmed. "They have everything," he whispered. "They stopped me coming out of the restroom, said they were doing random checks. Did they see what was in the folder?" I asked. "I don't think so. They just took it for security reasons. But they asked for my ID, wrote down my name." This was bad. Very bad. If they connected Blake to me or any of the others, the entire operation could unravel before it even began. I texted the group. Plan B. Plan B was riskier, less controlled, but still viable. Instead of distributing physical evidence during Weston's keynote, we would rely on digital exposure and verbal testimony. Less dramatic, perhaps, but harder to suppress. As attendees filtered back into the ballroom, I noticed two security guards speaking into their radios, scanning the crowd. They were looking for someone, us. At 10:45, the company's human resources director took the stage to introduce the next speaker. My breath caught when I recognized her. The same woman who had watched me from the hallway the day Lane told me to leave. "Before we continue," she said, her voice professionally pleasant, "a quick security announcement. We've been alerted to unauthorized materials being distributed at this event. If anyone approaches you with documents not provided by Summit staff, please notify security immediately." Murmurs rippled through the audience. She smiled reassuringly. "Just a precaution. Now please welcome our Vice President of Operations, who will discuss our award-winning safety protocols." My phone buzzed with panicked messages from our group. "They know. Should we leave? Are they going to arrest us?" I took a deep breath and typed, "Stay calm. Proceed as planned. They're nervous," which meant we had power. For the next hour, I sat through presentations about the company's commitment to quality, safety, and employee development, lies wrapped in glossy corporate language. My anger grew with every slide, every carefully constructed falsehood. At 11:50, the moment approached. Weston would take the stage at noon for his keynote address. Security presence had increased again. I counted 6 guards positioned around the room. I texted Victor. Status. His reply came instantly. Ready. At 11:55, the HR director returned to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Chief Operations Officer, Thomas Weston, who will deliver today's keynote on building a culture of innovation and integrity." Applause filled the room as Weston stood, buttoning his suit jacket, confidence etched on his face as he approached the podium. Behind him, the giant screen displayed the company logo and his presentation title until it changed. The screen flickered, and suddenly, instead of Weston's slides, an internal email appeared. His email to the head of Human Resources. Subject line, Re-Strategic Talent Reduction Program. The text was large enough for everyone to read. "The Wesley situation has been handled. Implement the exit strategy as discussed. Remember, this stays within the executive team only." Weston froze mid-step. The audience murmurs grew louder as the screen changed again, revealing a list of 63 employees who had been targeted, including the official reason for their departure and the actual reason they were pushed out. My name was highlighted. Official voluntary resignation due to performance issues. Actual reason: raised safety concerns about production line changes that would impact Q4 profits. Victor had come through. As the company's database administrator, he had access to the audiovisual system and had just broadcast what was never meant to be seen. Weston spun around, staring at the screen in horror. "Cut the feed!" he shouted to the tech booth. "Cut it now!" But Victor had locked them out. The presentation continued, document after document scrolling, templates for fabricating performance issues, scripts given to managers, the tracking system used to monitor the progress of breaking down targeted employees. The room erupted in chaos. Journalists pulled out phones, snapping photos. Industry executives whispered urgently to one another. Security rushed toward the tech booth, but the damage was done. In the midst of the commotion, I stood up. "My name is Penny Wesley," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. "That's my name on the screen. I was targeted for identifying safety issues that could have reduced quarterly profits by 3%. All eyes turned to me. I felt a flash of terror, then a strange calm. "I'm not alone," I continued. Around the room, others from our group stood. Blake Chen, targeted for questioning testing shortcut protocols. Mina Jordan, targeted for reporting regulatory compliance concerns. Rachel Torres, targeted for documenting worker injuries caused by accelerated production timelines. One by one, we introduced ourselves and our crimes. 11 former employees standing tall among hundreds of industry leaders and media representatives. Weston's face shifted from shock to fury. He pointed at me. "Security, remove these people immediately." Before they could react, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Lane walked in, followed by 7 current employees from different departments. My former supervisor looked directly at me, then turned to the room. "What they're saying is true," she said, voice shaking but determined. "I was ordered to falsify Penny's performance review. My own job depended on it." She held up a folder. "I have the documentation to prove it." Security hesitated, glancing at Weston, who had gone pale, eyes darting between the screen, the standing former employees, and the journalists furiously taking notes. "This is absurd," he finally sputtered into the microphone. "These are disgruntled former employees making unfounded accusations. This presentation has been hacked. The documents are fabricated." That's when Rachel stepped forward, pulling out her phone. "I recorded our meeting," she said. "The one where you told me either I quit or you'd make sure I never worked in this industry again. Would you like me to play it?" She didn't wait for an answer. She pressed play, and Weston's voice rang out clearly. "Your choice is simple, Rachel. Resign quietly. Or, we'll ensure your reputation is so damaged, no company in this sector will touch you. We've done it before." The ballroom went completely silent. Investors quietly left their seats, heading for the exits. The company's stock price would be plummeting as news spread. Weston grabbed his phone, frantically texting someone, likely the legal team. Too late. The story was already out, captured by every journalist in the room. The head of human resources stepped forward, attempting damage control as she took the microphone. "We take these allegations very seriously and will conduct a full investigation." Blake cut her off. "You're named in 37 of the documents currently displayed behind you. You personally designed the psychological targeting protocols." At that moment, hotel. Security arrived, distinct from the company's private team. The event manager approached the stage. "We've received reports of a disturbance. These individuals are trespassing," Weston said quickly. "They need to be removed." The manager hesitated, taking in the scene. The incriminating documents still projected, journalists filming everything, current and former employees standing their ground together. "Actually," a voice said from the back, "I believe what we're witnessing may be evidence of systemic corporate misconduct and workplace harassment." A woman stepped forward, producing a business card. "Charlotte Reed, Department of Labor. I was invited to hear about your company's exemplary workplace practices." She smiled thinly. I'm very interested in continuing this conversation. The revenge wasn't in the public humiliation, though that was undeniably satisfying. It wasn't in watching Weston's carefully crafted facade collapse in front of his peers, though that felt like justice. The real revenge came 3 weeks later, when the board of directors announced a complete leadership overhaul following an independent investigation. Weston and 5 other executives were terminated. The Strategic Talent Reduction Program was exposed in a front-page investigation. Class action lawsuits were filed on behalf of all targeted employees. The company implemented whistleblower protections and established an independent ethics committee with real authority. Former employees were contacted with offers of reinstatement, back pay, and public apologies. I didn't go back. Neither did most of us. But we had accomplished something that mattered. Not just personal vindication, but systemic change that would protect others. 6 months later, I launched my own consulting firm specializing in ethical workplace practices and employee advocacy. My first clients were former colleagues who had survived the same ordeal. The last time I saw Lane, she had been promoted to director of the newly formed Employee Advocacy Department. "We're building something better," she told me. "Something real this time." I believed her. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, but transforming it into something that can never hurt anyone else again. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of justice and transformation. Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice or stood up against a broken system? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, your voice matters. Sometimes it's the only force powerful enough to create real change. Thank you for listening to my journey from targeted employee to architect of accountability.